Hey, what's up, 251? So, I guess it's been a while since we've done a video, but we're going to be starting our, this next video is going to be on the ops design. So the ops design is basically what the U.S. uses in order to plan out all of our different operations and basically how we kind of get our thoughts all down on paper so that way everyone's on the same page. So, without further ado, on this first part right here, this right here is the new ops design format which we'll be using, that you'll use in your classes. So to start out, you have your strategic guidance. So what goes in your strategic guidance to start out with is your national and state objectives. So basically what your strategic national and state objectives are is what is the United States as a whole trying to do here. You're going to pull these directly from the National Security Strategy or NSS. Basically, go to the NSS and look it up and try to see what your topic is, and then just pull straight from that what the U.S. is saying is our national and state objectives. The next thing you have for your strategic guidance is your strategic military and state and objectives. So for this is what is the military trying to accomplish. So for this, we're going to be looking at things like the National Military Strategy, the National Defense Strategy, and especially the different posture statements. So, sorry about that. An example that I've done right here in terms of Yemen is this first part right here is we seek a stable Yemen, blah, 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 blah. That is pulled straight from the NSS. That wasn't pulled for the most recent one, but from the previous NSS. And then this one right here was pulled straight from the CENTCOM posture statement. So this is kind of an example of basically verbatim from each of these sources. So moving on to this next one is we have the operational environment. So in the operational environment is where you're going to get into something called PMESI. So PMESI stands for political, military, economic, social, informational, and infrastructure. Now, unfortunately, one of the things I don't like about this new one is that there's not a lot of space. So I had to leave a lot of the PMESI out. But basically, this is where your PMESI goes. Your political, what is the United States politically looking at this situation? For example, governments, political parties in power, that kind of thing. For the military, this is what we're used to. What are the militaries doing? What is our military doing? What are their military forces doing? So on and so forth. For economic, what you're going to be looking at there is how is their economy doing? How is money changing hands? What kind of economic ties are going into this operational environment? Which is a very important thing, especially when you're dealing with both extremist organizations as well as governments, because money is what makes war work. Moving on, after economic, we have social. So these are just kind of like some social factors that you may or may not be aware of, or these, I guess, were the social factors we are aware of. For example, like a Sunni and Shia split in the region that we might be able to capitalize on, so on and so forth. Infrastructure, how is the infrastructure in this region doing? How is the infrastructure in this area operating? If it's a government, what kind of military bases do they have? What kind of assets do they have in the region? If you're looking at more of a country as a whole or an extremist organization as a whole, what kind of shadow infrastructures work? So shadow infrastructure is what the insurgents will sometimes set up in order, to provide needs for the population that the government isn't meeting. And then lastly, information. So this is not intelligence. That's something that's been drilled into our head. This is not intelligence. It's how is their information dispersed. So if it's we're looking at a government, we're looking at more news outlets. Is it state-run media? For extremist organizations, social media, what kind of social media are they using, how are they using it, so on and so forth. Alright, now moving on to the next section, we have our problematic conditions. So these are conditions in the current region that the United States does not like and wants to change. So an example of this is Yemen civil war. Generally, civil war is a bad thing. Yemen is also a safe haven for terrorists. Again, a bad thing. And then, so on this side, you have your problematic conditions, but then on this other side, you have your desired conditions. So what are we trying to incite change for? And each of your desired conditions should correspond directly with one of your problematic conditions. So, a very easy example, Yemen is at civil war, Yemen is no longer at civil war. You see how these two things tie directly together. Again, with the safe haven, Yemen is no longer a safe haven. Now, again, moving on to the next thing is we have our center of gravities. Now, center of gravities, I'm sure teachers will get into more details, but center of gravities is what makes your organization tick. What is that one thing that if you lose it or if your enemy loses it, then their entire operation is going to fall completely apart and they will be unable to effectively wage war. This is a very complicated subject, and it will not be included in this video. I'll talk with Colonel Kaz and see if he wants me to do one directly on COGs, or if they're just going to talk about how you pick your COG and all the different fun things that go into a COG in class. So, moving on now to the actual operational approach. This is where rubber meets the road. What are you actually going to be doing? So the first thing you have, these black lines where I have oil fields, provide aid, and kinetic ops. These are called lines of effort. So these are basically what are the 3 things you're going to do in order to protect your COG and take out the enemy COG and achieve your desired conditions. This can be anything you think of, but the military has to be able to do it all. For example, if we had aid, this would have to be aid that the military can provide, so airdrops, that kind of thing. Kinetic ops is really easy. But we're going to look at oil fields. So inside each of your lines of effort, you're going to have 3 or more intermediate objectives. These are basically what are smaller subset objectives that you're going to be doing inside your LOE in order to achieve your LOE. So the ones I picked here are we're going to deny rebel access to the oil fields, we're going to train locals to be able to defend the oil fields, and then we're going to use ISR to watch the oil fields and help provide support. So all these 3 things here help us to work with our main line of effort of the oil fields in this case. All of them help us to secure the oil fields. And the oil fields in turn help us make sure Yemen is no longer at civil war and help prevent Yemen as a safe haven, since oil fields are a very large source of money and thus can be used to help provide a more stable Yemen. You then repeat this with your other 3 LOEs, and then that's the operational approach. So if you guys have any other questions, feel free to shoot me an email or shoot Colonel Kaz an email. But other than that, have a great Air Force Day.